Welcome to You Can Do It. Today we're talking R56 Minis and Cataclean. So it doesn't really matter what engine you've got or what car you've got, but we're just using the Mini Cooper S here as an example. So there's a lot of talk about this Cataclean, about helping you cleaning out cats and the engine and everything, basically making it run better. So test it on this and just see exactly what it does. We're going to do a test. Once the engine's warm, we're going to go inside and check on the computer. Then we're going to add this. Then we're going to go for, I think it's a 15-mile drive with this on quarter of a tank of fuel. Then we're going to test it again and see if there's any difference. Then we're going to put a full tank of fuel back in it, take it for a long run, and then we'll do a test then. So you'll get 3 results: before, so in the middle, once you've done the first 15 miles, and then afterwards. Anyway, now the history about this engine is that we did a full refresh about 20,000 kilometers ago, which includes new piston rings, head off, all the valves done, seated, new cam chain, etc. Everything was done, but it's still running on the original Cat. And looking at the moment, I get once or twice every quarter, I get a little fault come up on there that tells me that it's a 276A fault, which says the catalytic converter conversion is not working properly. In other words, the Cat's not working 100%. Now, the way the engine works that out is through the O2 sensors. Let's get straight to the chase. So your O2 sensors. So how does the computer even know that there's anything wrong with your Cat? So what you do on these minis, this is your turbo here, and you've got your catalytic converter is sort of comes out the turbo into the exhaust. You've got your first O2 sensor, which is before your catalytic converter. So that's called the pre-Cat O2 sensor, which obviously is before the Cat. So this is measuring the air fuel. This is an AFR. It's either an O2 on the older ones, or as it's called an air fuel meter on the later ones, and that measures the fuel as it comes out of the exhausts, and it sees whether it's rich or lean. And the job of this is to tell the engine management system what it is, and then the engine management system is using the catalytic converter by switching between rich and lean. So the signal from this O2 sensor should be rich, lean, rich, lean, rich, lean. And then you've got your catalytic converter there, which is probably about 50 centimeters long, and then under that, after the Cat, is another O2 sensor like this. So this is an AFR, the other one is just a straight O2, and that measures the stuff coming out of the Cat. Now that should be much more stable because the Cat's doing its job of filtering out when it goes rich and lean, then the Cat then converts all those with the oxygen and everything in the Cat, converts it, so what comes out the back should be just much more stable. So the rear O2 sensor or post-Cat sensor should be just much more of a sort of stable line, so not like up and down like that. Now if your pre-Cat sensor follows your O2 sensor, they're both going like that, and following the post-Cat sensor, so they're both the same, that generally means that your Cat is not working, which is when the computer triggers a fault. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to run this until it gets warm. Then we're going to go inside. We're going to put our launch bi-directional reader on there and test the O2 sensors. So I'll give you a link to the scanner I'm using in the description. But anyway, let's go warm this engine up, and then we'll go inside and do some tests. Okay, so we've been for a bit of a run. So your port for your scanner is down here, underneath your dash. So you plug that in. This is a launch scanner I've got, like that. So basically, if you can see there on the scanner, you've got a choice of diagnostic, OBD2. We're going to go to the OBD2. All right, we're going to log on there. Okay, so we've got live data. Press on live data. Okay, pressed on live data. So we're just going to go down here, and we are going to just check the engine coolant temperature, and then we want to find O2 sensor 1, O2 sensor 2. Okay, press like that. So there we've got them now. So the temperature is 102. So the engine is not up to temperature yet. So we're going to so it should be 108 before the engine's up to proper operating temperature. So we're going to let this run for a little bit until we get up to 108. So I'll be back. So here we are. It's up to 180 degrees now, and this is why these minis run really, really hot. 108 degrees, so that's up to temperature now. Oxygen sensor, front one is because it's an AFR, so it's a wideband O2 sensor that measures your current, so it's milliamps. And The rear one, bank 1 sensor 2, is a normal O2 sensor, so it measures between 0.1 volt and 0.9 volts. So yeah, it's about right, 0.7, sit like that. So what we can do is we can go combine, and we'll have a report on that and that. So let's have a quick look. So this is the top sensor. The blue one is your first sensor, look, and that's jumping up and down. Now the rear one, and this is your rear one, you see, look. Now that's jumping up and down, but that is not as much, look. You see? I'm running it now at 2,500 RPM. But it's still moving around a bit. If we look here, look, it's 0.7, so it's quite stable. And this is 0.07, 08, yeah. Look, she's up to 111 degrees. This is how hot these cars run before the bloody fan kicks in, look. It's insane. It's too hot. That's why these engines cook themselves. Look, 113. Fans will kick in soon. Alright. Look, so she's running pretty stable at 0.74 at the bottom. And this is the thing, we're running at about 2,500 at the moment. Okay, so this is sort of, if I do a quick, go back and we just do, yeah, combine. Just do a quick graph of those two so you can see. And we'll see if this Cataclean does anything to it. So the orange is the rear sensor and the blue is the front sensor. It's a bit of a shit because the scales are obviously different and they're measuring different, so it's actually really difficult to see. Let's just try, let's go back here, just try the rear one. Pretty stable. Yeah, so if it was jumping down to 0.1, then you'd be starting to really worry what's going on, but this is pretty stable at 0.7, look. Now that'll give us an idea, so when we come back we'll have a look at that. Now last thing before we put that Cataclean in, let's have a quick look at your fuel trim. Long-term fuel trim, bank 1. Short trim, bank 1. Okay. The short trim, bank 1, sensor 2. Okay, so temperatures come down now. Long term fuel trim 0. That means that's good. It means that in the long term it's not having to make any corrections. O2 sensor 1, that's pretty stable. O2 sensor 2, it's not too bad. Short term fuel trim at the moment is 0. It's all looking quite good actually. So let's put some of this Cataclean in and see if it does anything. Right, here's our, and I'll take the lid off. I've already put a hole in it now. So now what we basically do, we stick it in there. You need to have about 15 litres of fuel in your tank. It's about quarter full really for most things. Now what we're going to do is just let all this in. I mean, if you're impatient, you can just squeeze it like I am. Yeah. Alright, let's squeeze all that in there. So we've emptied that, I'll chuck that in the bin, that's all nice and tight. So let's take this for we'll take it for a hard drive down the Autobahn, get up to 100 all the way for 15 miles. And then we'll stop and then we'll measure, we'll do another test on the O2 sensors. Now we're going to do it, what we're going to do, look, we're just going to wipe these down, look. And then we can tell a lot from the stuff that comes out of the back here, if that's black or... So look, that's all nice and chrome coloured. That's how we get on. Okay, so we've been down the motorway or the Autobahn to where we need to be, and we're running about 4,000 RPM all the way down, which is sort of 160k in top gear. Now, if we look now at the rear O2 sensor, it's definitely a lot more stable. The first one's jumping around, which it should do. That is definitely a lot more stable. So let's put it onto graph. Now it's graphing. Now look at that. Now that is a lot more. Look how stable that is. Wow, so definitely that Cataclean has done something. Look at that. So that was a blast down the motorway. We were doing about 170 to 180 kilometers an hour sometimes, and basically averaging about 160. And look, those pipes, that's why we did that. Look, they're completely clean. So I'm fairly happy about that. And that really is, before I put that Cataclean in, they would have been a little bit black. So I definitely can confirm at the moment, with just doing the first part of the 30-40 miles on quarter of a tank, and then I'm going to fill it up with fuel, but it's definitely looking like it's working.